Hello, everybody. Looks like I need to rearrange the names real quick for.
My Blaine again. I love when that happens.
Yeah. Blaine and Ari are swapped up
Oh.
right there. Ashley's all good.
Practically the same.
No, you got her.
People say
There
it
we
all
go.
the time.
Bucket hat and beard. I mean, who cares?
I was like bucket hat, beard. What do you guys
Can't
want?
even-
True.
It's like twins. It's like twins. Well, hello everybody. Thank you for joining us for tonight's MLSFI live stream. I hear that music. You should hear that music. It's good music. Had that fixed up a year or two ago by someone from Fiverr, whose name escapes me right now, but it's pretty good. I enjoyed that. And the bumps, the little bumps in the ending music, all done through Fiverr. So fantastic little service there. I gave him a little blurb about, hey, here's what I wanted, sports stuff, yada yada, but wanted to not make it be very extra time esque, and so had a nice little work up there. I think really hit well. The guy had fun doing it too, so that's always a plus. Thank you everyone for joining us. Like I was saying, the social is out on Discord and on Twitter. So if you would not care, please do share that, like and retweet. Also, if you're seeing us on YouTube for the first time, please do like and subscribe. Hit the bell button if you would like. That does help let you know when we come on every week. We're here to bring some fantasy information and chat to help you get ready for the week. There's a few different podcasts out now, so we're very happy to have you guys with us or listening to us. So, but yeah, please do like and subscribe. It helps the metrics. It's great. So you get to see us. It's really fun. The crazy stuff that goes on sometimes we reference on the actual show. Let's see here. All right, so it looks like everybody's here. We have our prep. Happy to have Ari with us. So we will let me get. Was that good where the microphone was? I don't even know if people could hear me when it was there. I didn't have it in front of me to move my.
This sounds better now.
There we go. That's because the microphone was over here and not here, and I had to move this monitor down. That's one thing. I got monitor arms for my monitors that last over the break, and it's been fantastic. Fantastic investment right there. Okay, enough of that. So good. We shall do the for real. We are already recording. Yay. Because Ashley's here to make sure we do that stuff.
That's correct.
And that's
Just
why.
my presence.
Exactly. No, that's it. It's like, oh crap, Ashley's here. Okay, well we will
Gotta do it.
do
Follow
the
the rules.
It's right. Do the intro and we'll get started here. Hello and welcome to episode 9 of the MLS Fantasy Insider, our review of round 5 and preview of round 6. This episode is brought to you by Beer Skittles? Because MLS. That's why. Actually, brought to you by the amazing MLS Fantasy Insider Patreon supporters. It's because of you that we're able to keep this project going, and we're so happy to have all of you along the way with us. Learn more about our Patreon project over at patreon.com/MLSFI. I'm your host, Reed Connolly from MLSFantasyBoss.com, and tonight I'm joined by my partners in fantasy, Blaine Riffle and Ashley Savage. We'd also like to welcome our special guest, one of our top Patreon supporters for the past few years, and Discord member, Ari Hillman. What's up, everyone?
Hello.
So that brought to you by this week, sort of a shot towards your way, Ari. I'm pretty sure one of the Fox broadcasters had Skittles in beer at the Minnesota game. Was that just a random dude, or is that a thing?
I didn't hear that, but I was at the game. Not sound all fancy, so I did not know that. But if so, I would not be surprised. Minnesotans are weird. We're all unique.
I mean, you not knowing
like
about
both.
it makes me feel like it's just a rando, just kind of coming out there like, this is my thing. I ran out of Skittles, don't have enough hands. Here he goes into the cup.
That sounds perfect. Little beer Skittles.
I
I'm
don't
sure
know.
it's done.
Some of those micro brewers could probably blame. Maybe this is getting into more your area for Skittle beer. I don't know. That's
I
Nice
don't
light
fruit-
IPA, a little extra fruity taste in that.
I
right?
think
I
I
don't
had a
fruit the
sour
beer.
once that was like that.
There you
Skittles
go.
Beer,
Yeah.
but I don't remember what kind.
Yeah, you don't fruit the beer. That's me.
well, you could go with
But-
a little
Yeah.
bit of orange
But-
slice or something.
Christian sent us something that Skittles beer. There's a company that makes one, like a cream ale with Skittles in them.
I mean, it's
Interesting.
whatever works. I felt like this was a great brought to you by because this round was just such a classic because
Because
MLS round.
MLS.
Like, why not?
Oh, yes.
Beer in your skills. For those of you who are new with us with the podcast this year, welcome to our community. But this round was a classic example of because MLS, with players called up, with players injured, with random rotations going on, players you didn't know or maybe you knew of in the fringe are starting, scoring double digits, players coming back and just pulling up just goose eggs, and it was your classic because MLS moment with the way that our schedule works. And so why not have Skittles with your beer during a little call up random week like this? It just seemed so fitting. But hey, this is part of our game. This is part of why depth matters. This is part of why knowing some of the alternate options matter. And even at times when you feel like you do know that, you get a game like Philadelphia where it's like, wait a minute, I thought you were bragged about being one of the best depth teams. But we'll get into that in just a second because we're going to go over our expectations versus reality for some fantasy takeaways. For me, I know I've seen you guys who are in chat with us, go ahead and start sharing your scores. But I know some people shared their scores with me on Twitter this afternoon, and I'm just going to give a shout out to Gene, longtime player, solid player, great loyal fan, joins us all the time. He and I right in that same neck of the woods. I'm just looking at a 66 points this week, just horrible. I may have won one of my head-to-heads for someone else who equally had a horrible round. Just no one really hit for me. My captain had a dud on me, which was bittersweet because I captained Mukhtar, thinking that they would do something against Cincinnati, and they did not, and Cincy won. So I was pretty much set up to win-win with that game from a fandom point of view, but not from a fantasy point of view. So bench didn't do fantastic for me, and I fell victim to some, as also Gene again, some last-minute tinkering that did not need to happen, i.e. swapping my San Jose keeper I had for LAFC and adding in Wagner as well into my team. Just some FOMO came and hit me there. At least Jerussi got 8, which was something for me. But this was not a round that I am going to be eager to remember, and I think a lot of people are in that boat with me. I know Ari was mentioning some of that before the show started, but Ashley, you had a bit better of a week than I did. So how did you go, and what kind of expectation reality do you have for us?
I mean, not much of a better week, to be fair. I mean, point-wise, sure. I had a 73. The reason I was frustrated with it was because I've had Klaus in my team every week of the season so far, and he's had a goal or a goal contribution every week. I kept going back and forth between him and Abobasi. I think I got a little chalky, a little group mentality, and went Abobasi instead. Bumped out of 2. Klaus had, I think, 13. So that's the only reason I'm a little bummed about my score. I think generally a decent score for the week. I'm up to 120.1 total value for my team though, which is great. I haven't intentionally been prioritizing value, so I'm pretty stoked to be where I'm at when I've been, like I said, it's kind of been the second thing I focused on, not the first. Expectations versus reality for this past week. It's always awkward to decide who gets to do it. I guess we just decide whoever wins between the three of us. That's who gets to do the expectation versus reality. You did it the other week.
That's exactly how I decided it.
So SKC versus Seattle, honestly, my expectation was like a very messy, lots of yellows, 1-1 draw. That's just where I thought that game would go. Seattle had 6 international call-ups. SKC was in a home environment with basically no one called up. The reality was the red card really affected the game. Jordan Morris as a 9 was amazing. Leo Chu decided to actually become a soccer player. 4 goals from one guy, 4 assists from one guy. That's a fantasy player's dream. Both were incredibly underowned. So I'm not sure who really got to benefit from that. But just from a fantasy takeaway, very, very surprising to me to see that result. And then the other game that we watched from end to end in my house was the LAFC FC Dallas game. And even with the call-ups, I expected a pretty easy win for LAFC. I thought Bella, maybe Opoku would get on the score sheet. But FC Dallas put up one hell of a fight. They had a defender score, which is big for fantasy implications. Tafari. Bella missed a PK, which I know all the Never Bella people will come out and be like, he only got 8. He missed a PK, blah. And then I think my favorite fantasy and MLS takeaway from that game was Bouanga. Played 90 minutes with Gabon, got on a red eye, took a flight, landed earlier that day, came to the game, came in off the bench, scored the game-winning goal. Like, that dude just lives and breathes to score goals, and it's so fun. You guys know how big of a Chicho Arango fan I was. I feel like them signing Bouanga kind of sealed the deal to push Chicho out. I miss him in fantasy, but man, so great to see that from Bouanga. Yeah, like you said, Reed, I definitely was upset to not see LAFC keep that clean sheet. I think that was a lot of people's late, keeperoo or tinker-to, right? Because it was the latest game. But still content with my 73 and very interesting, non-expected results in the LAFC and then the Seattle SKC game.
Quick call back to the Seattle game. We know, of course, that 4 goals is not going to be the norm for anybody. So good to see that solid performance from Morris. But what about Chewy? Not consistent. Most minutes he's had.
Sure.
Just a quick takeaway for players who are, as we've talked about, there's sort of a roulette going then in Seattle.
Absolutely. So Leo Chu was a huge signing as far as hype for the Sounders last season. I think some of us probably picked him up as maybe a bench play for a couple of games when he first started going. But he just very much did not fit in with the coaching staff. Like, they were very open about how he wasn't playing in the system the way they wanted, and he wouldn't track back on defense. So he just never started. He also never looked like he was really going to produce very much. He looked like kind of a make and bust winger, right? Like, you want to sign a flashy, cross the ball in, lots of assists, dribble, cut in winger. He didn't seem like that. But this season, he's come in off the bench. They've talked a lot about how different his mentality is this season. And I think when you get some of these players injured, international stuff, I think he'll get a lot more starts. The problem is Brian Spencer will live and die by that formation. And so he's going to either have to take the place of Jordan Morris or Christian Roldan, who are both 2 players that aren't going to, that maybe they'll leave, for international duty, but they're, you're not going to beat them out. So I'm going to touch on him a little bit when we talk on midfielders for this next week, mostly from a price rise point of view. But I think you could see him work his way into the starting lineup at some point. But 4 goals for Jordan Morris is crazy, but not as crazy as Leo Chu getting 4 assists. Like, I don't expect that production from him. I think he could be a fantasy player at some point to pay attention to, but not in a midfield. I mean, I guess maybe Jordan Morris is a striker in the game, so could possibly come into play a little later in the season, but he's still not living up to like the hype, when they signed him.
Sure.
So we'll see.
All right, Ari, best score of the group. How'd you do, and what were some of the takeaways you had?
So I got an 80, which I'm happy about. What's weird is week rank was 1,054, which normally you'd be like, ooh, that was a rough round. But like, oddly enough, it seems this was one of those weeks where even finishing 1,054 is okay. I'm just judging by a lot of scores from a lot of the returning people that play this game. My big thing, I did keep Mr. Klaus in as the starting striker. And he did put up, what was that, a 17?
Yeah.
So he really did well, which is good. Hopefully he simmers off next week. But again, really good this week. I captained Espinosa, which was another good hit for me. And then I had Gallagher on defense, which I know he was talked about a bunch this past week. And he put up a 9, which he got a goal. So credit to, again, this podcast for helping people out, making names available, and then you kind of look them up, go for them, and they can turn into good points. This week, I did state it would be crazy, and it was, and I love it. I'm all for chaos and panic. Again, a lot of people, we talk about chalk picks, but when you get those weeks where there's really only 1 or 2 guys on your team that you're like, most of the league has these players on their team, just makes for fun, makes for chaos. If you're in that Discord group, it does add to that, which I do enjoy. And then I was going to say the Columbus Atlanta game. As a Minnesota fan, obviously I really enjoyed seeing that. I'm going to nickname Almada this season the conductor because I know Atlanta's big with their trains or whatever it was. And as you saw, they really derailed this week when he was not there.
Oh, too soon.
And so obviously I expected it to be closer. I knew both teams were missing some big name players, but 6-1, that felt a little bit better after again losing 6-1 to them, our first game ever in MLS. So it was good to see them kind of take a whooping. And then I think that's basically it. My next point I'll save for down the road when we get into picks.
Yeah, we'll touch on some of those players for sure.
Yes.
Blaine, you've got an interesting talking point for us tonight, but let's hear how you did. I know you've been bragging about your value build all around, so how's that playing out for you and your takeaways?
I'm pushing 118 on my value, so I'm not upset by that at all. It has actually allowed me to do a lot this week. When you get to my picks, I'll have some stuff. I've got some expensive plays that I'm able to make this week, and I like being able to do it. But I only got a 70 for the round. Not too thrilled, but I was out last week. I've had some life stuff come up, and I actually took a did not play on my bench and in my starting lineup, so I only got 10 scores on the round. So that hurt, but I pulled a 70 with those 10 guys. So I'm not upset by the result. Seeing everybody in chat score, seeing kind of where the average is. I think I went up in the overall rankings a little bit with that, but I mean the extra 5 or 7 points I would have gotten from another midfielder would have been huge. But everybody early hit for me. It was nice. One of my big plays, and this is going to be one of my big takeaways for this, I went with Brugman for LA. And he pulled a 7 as I think he was like an 8.1, 8.0 flat for the week. So I went with one of those cheaper defensive midfielders, got a decent return and a price rise on him. But I just went for solid points because I was struggling to pick midfielders last week. I had no idea where to go. I didn't see big points from any of them. I went with little bit cheaper options that I thought were going to get price rises and just kind of spread it out and shotgun approach it a little bit because the best players like Lucho Acosta, I wanted him, but then you see what game he's in going on the road to Nashville. There's no points there. So I've been looking at defensive midfielders, and Jose Martinez has popped in my radar a couple of times. I almost went with him for the week, but I decided Brugman was better. Nwobodo for Cincinnati is one that other weeks is really good. When you've got that 8 million guy who's putting up bonus points, getting in the attack, you're getting some extra value there that when you don't know where your points are coming from your attacking players, maybe go with a little bit safer option, a little bit cheaper, get more bang for your buck. Price per million or points per million spent is always a huge metric for me, and it's a big deciding factor. And I think the money this week was better served going with somebody like that. So I'm actually finding value in some of those more attacking-minded defensive midfielders right now. And I'm looking at them again this week a little bit because I just don't know where else to go at times. On that, for the games, I expected a little more from Philly. I know there was some rotation, but Torres over there should have done better. I liked him as a 10 preseason coming in to back up Gazdag. Just didn't get it done. Maybe that's there. It's just Philly's defense just doesn't look great right now. They're just too leaky for my liking. But on the other side of that, Ojeda is living up to that Facundo Torres role. I know they're playing on opposite sides. We talked about him in preseason. He's coming on strong. Had a really good game in this one with another goal. He's a guy at 6.5 right now. We have to watch out for him. If they've got favorable matchups, he's kind of the big one, and he's finally living up to the expectations I had for him preseason. And then the Austin, Colorado game. I expected very little here, and that's really what we got. None of the big names really hit, but Austin couldn't even keep the clean sheet. And this is a defense I know we've targeted. I think this was one of the better clean sheet defenses for the weekend when we were looking at it going in. Thankfully, I had Bingham on the bench, so I got to sub out Stuver, and Gallagher scored the goal, so I didn't lose out much there. But Austin's just a team in shambles right now. Can't rely on them to get you steady points. And if the defense isn't going to keep it together, they're a team I'm probably going to be avoiding from now on.
So the one comment I want to make before we move on, two comments I want to make before we move on. One, I'd be remiss if I did not call out now, which I should have at the beginning, the big thank you to Ashley for running the show last week when Blaine was out and I was dealing with stomach bug baby Roo. So a big fantasy round of applause for Ashley. And Jason, who was on here, had
Yes.
great feedback. From everyone.
I was gonna say, you guys know I love hearing myself talk, so it was really just.
No, it was good.
It was lovely,
and especially during such a precursor to a strange week with all the call-ups and absences and crazy things that impacted even our initial reviews. So
that's a shout out to Tyler, because if Tyler hadn't put in that work, we would have just been talking about picking up Gas Egg and Zella Ryan and all these people that weren't actually here. So kudos to him and everybody that helps him. I'll say it for the 1,000th time. I feel like I said it like 15 times last week and it wasn't enough. But yeah.
So yeah, big thanks to the community. The other thing I want to say is I'm going to push back some against the D-mid comment that Blaine made. At the beginning of this season, some of them have been okay with some value gains, but otherwise they have not been returning the results that I think that we would expect in general, especially for some of the players at such high values. You've gotten some of your safe points, but even this last round, it was attacking players who were getting the results. It was attacking players in the sub 7 million ranges who were getting the results, and that's the points per million that you're looking at. I think it's very true that some of our big name traditional players have not been producing, but it's still the attacking players who are getting those points. And week to week, without it being strange circumstances or just a lucky little result, it is not defensive players who are doing any better than normal, who are doing any better that's making them stand out. They've had a few games, especially at the beginning of the season, as people are knocking some rust off, finding into form. But I do not believe that defensive midfielders are going to be the way to go. Nwobodo, being one, was in the dream team at the beginning of the year, and then the last 3 games, a 4, a 6, and a 4. I mean, that is not what you want to get from a guy that you're paying $8 million for on your team. So I'm
gonna agree with you in that if I can, and also kind of add that I think as the rounds go on, these type of players start to decrease in point production. I think the first couple rounds of a season, before other teams can adjust and figure out what these demons are doing, there's more point production, and as they fall back into a defensive mid role, like we've made jokes about this. I feel like a defensive mid in fantasy is like a running long-term joke that we make. No, like as just sure you're gonna get like a 4 out of them, but there's not a lot of goal contributions or anything like that. So I agree with what Blaine's saying with some of the specific names he's mentioning, but I think there are some much better spots for midfielders as everybody starts to price rise and can afford more of the people that you want to afford.
The nice part, though, is with the takeaway that Blaine was saying, overall, it makes it more almost like it adds towards that differential where it's yeah, if you look at a guy like Hani Mukhtar, Espinoza, and then you look at Nwobodo, 9 times out of 10, you're going to take Espinoza or Mukhtar. But there are those matchups, and it's part of the reason why I like fantasy so much, is kind of picking that one-off scenario guy and being like, based on what I've seen on, Team X and this player, that like, even though normally you would not do this, you would not pick that defensive mid, this week, knowing these 2 systems and these 2 teams, I could see a very good point production. And it may bite you in the ass. You never know. But overall, I kind of like that. Live risky a little bit. Take some of those risks. It just makes it a little more exciting during the game.
Yeah, and I'm making a point here for early season. Like, I'm not saying these guys are better than any of the big names. Don't hear that. I was saying I was struggling to find mids that I trusted against their opponents. Like I mentioned Lucho Acosta. He was on my radar, but then he had to travel to Nashville for a game. That's a tough game. I'm looking at guys that are getting good bonus points in a system. Like I liked Brugman last week because Portland does get forward in the attack, There's a lot of chance for him to go pick up some bonus points, which he did. And they had a good clean.
Defensive mid.
Yeah, he's defensive mid. They were playing like a 4-1-4-1, and he was that first one.
Well, we don't want to go fall too far down that rabbit hole.
It's solid. What I was getting at is they have a little bit more predictable points when you know how they play and when they're getting into a team that's going to attack into them. Those predictable points and less variance are sometimes more valuable at that price point than gambling on, say, a Leo Chu who went off, or Krylock was another guy I heard a ton last week. St. Louis is one of those teams that's really hot right now. Don't know how good defensively they are, or if they've just not played anybody who can score very consistently. Like, it's kind of back and forth on that. But Krylock got a 2 for about the same money. And so I thought about switching him to Krylock, but I was like, I'm going to take the more sure points and just build my floor up for 1 week. And early in the season, when you're fighting budget a little bit, that floor is huge, and less variance is what I'm looking at right now with some of these guys.
So the final word that I'm going to give with it is it's also an opportunity for you to consider those players as a differential option, because I think there are times, especially with rotation, where you could look for some points like that, like Blaine's saying, maybe get 4 to 6, maybe 8 if you're lucky with somebody, or that could be a spot where you could find a player who's a depth player coming in, and some of those we'll touch on coming up in our picks section as an ideal Aru option for you moving forward. But I think we're kind of split, maybe 2 to 1.5, some of there. But interested in knowing what everyone else who is listening to the show thinks. Hit us up on Twitter. Do you think that defensive midfielders have a very viable place at the beginning of the season, especially, or how far going forward do you think we should have that? Or is this just a continuation of the ever ongoing conversation of what value are defensive mids to MLS fantasy? We will talk more about that, I'm sure, in shows to come. But up next, we're going to be talking about what you can expect with the housekeeping for round 6. Ooh, good transition. That's what I thought from that.
I love that.
Smooth. I thought that was a good one. Every now and then, just get it.
God, last week I was just like, and now we're gonna pause.
It worked. I was able to do it.
I can't, do what you do.
All right, welcome back for segment 2, our housekeeping section for this round. First, I need to point out the Fantasy Champions League. This is round 6, which means it is the final round of the first quarter qualifying season, chunk, segment, quarter, whatever we want to call it. It has an official name. I don't remember. Yeah. But this is our first quarter qualifier, and that ends with round 6. The qualifier round 2 is going to be from round 7 through 12. Qualifier 2, round 7 through 12. And of course, the quick recap. The top 50 scoring players during these qualifiers are going to be entered into the Fantasy Champions League for the final rounds of this season to play for even more fantastic prizes. So yeah, if this is where you have been saving your budget, building it up to start actually playing the game in round 2, just go ahead and say that if you're not doing as great. Say you've been building your budget. Round 7 through 12 is the second qualifier, so be ready for that after this. Quick league updates. Champions League. Half Century City with a record of 4-1-0 is leading our Pro Rel Champions League. That's no more ties and no perfect win records right there. So 4-1-0 is leading in the Fantasy Champions League. Moving on to the Veterans League. Master Kathy Bates leads with a record of 5-0-0. Down to homegrown Spirit Flyers are the lone 5-0-0 team right there. And then over in our Discovery League, our fourth tier is where we have to go before we still see some teams tied. We have 8 teams who are tied with a record of 4-0-1, but it is a what a hunt by points in that league. Moving over to our Discord community, 8 teams are tied with a record of 5-0-0, one of the few perfect teams rounds that we still have. But it is Sporting Pork Roll CF by points in that league. With our fantastic Patreon supporters, 4 teams are tied with a record of 4-0-0 with Sloppy Steaks by points in that league. And again with Sloppy Steaks being the sole 5-0-0 record holder in the MLS Fantasy Insider Experts Invitational right there. So very, very tight competition. Yes, round of applause for that performance. For actual round 6, everything starts Saturday, April 1st at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Now, please take note of this next part. For the past 5 rounds, there's always been an early team. Be them playing at 4, be them playing at 7, and people coming later. For this round 6, that's not the case. A whole bunch of teams are starting at 7:30. So this is not a round where you get one early team. We got a whole bunch of teams at 7:30, a whole bunch of teams at 8:30, and then we end the game with Colorado LAFC at 9:30, and then San Jose versus Houston and Vancouver versus Montreal at 10:30. So it's going to likely be these 9:30, 10:30 games if you're looking for your ruse to set things up to make that the easiest for you to do that. But a whole bunch of games start out at 7:30, so be ready for that with your lineups this round. Nobody's on a double again, but it is Austin who is on the bye week, and you definitely have a single game, or you definitely have bye week player scrubs for your team that there at all the positions, so you can stretch your money if you still need that. We do have some international games that are still wrapping up. However, we are expecting the majority of players to be back from those games, but I'll let Blaine get into any of the suspension, injury, and other absence that we could have. But we should be seeing basically back to normal rosters, right, Blaine?
Yeah, should be really close to normal. Only a few things that Tyler sent over. Tuamasi for Dallas got a red card, and then Ben Sweat for Kansas City was the one who got that red card that allowed Morris to go off the rest of the way for that. Few injuries to be concerned about. Andrew Gutman for Atlanta was a pretty good attacking wingback for us. Unknown length, not really sure what's going on, but he's going to be out for a little bit. Really interesting one. It's not a defense I've trusted much, but David Bingham left the game early. They were out of subs or out of sub windows, could not take him off, so he just came out of the game with left knee, left leg injury. Hearing it's probably going to be bad long term. One to watch for Bossy for Houston. Cheap option, cheap forwards, been taking PKs for them. Subbed out early with an injury. Not sure exactly what's going on there, but keep an eye on that one. He's somebody that I was seeing pop up in more and more fantasy teams. Marco Farfan for Dallas also picked up a little bit of an injury, so watch that whole defense this week. Pinto for Cincy, and then Jean Mata for Miami subbed out late. So not sure exactly what's going on there, but he's been one of their more creative players this year, so keep an eye on that. And then 2 pieces of good news. Carlos Gil returned as a sub and had an assist in that first game back. And then Christian Ramirez got the start for Columbus, and they dismantled Atlanta, and he was a part of that. So if Ramirez is going to be the starting striker there, that's something to definitely take note of, especially when Zella gets back. Just kind of watch that whole Columbus thing. But if Ramirez is in, he's somebody that's got to be on the radar at this point for both price and just form in general.
We do have to say that it's Cucho's got a knee injury, which is why he's out right now.
Okay. That was not in here. That was probably in last week's list. That may or may not have gotten right off. And then Christian in chat is saying Gald subbed early versus Minnesota with hamstring tightness.
So there we go. Good updates. Good to hear about players coming back, but we are still going to have to decide which players we want, which we are going to do in our next segment right after this quick break. All right. Yeah, Christian was saying Sloppy Steaks first overall. I think he's second overall, but still. So that's quite the accomplishment right there. Love seeing our fantasy community members right there at the top of the list, which we do so often. You guys are awesome.
Yeah. Sloppy Steaks, tied for first on points.
Okay.
Love it. That counts. I would say I was first overall if I was tied for first on points.
Yeah, I don't know what the tiebreaker is on that.
technically
Probably
number
nothing
2.
yet. Yeah.
MLS will just say
He
neither
got
of the
Skylared.
teams, and-
He got Skylared.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
All right. All right, welcome back. We're talking our player targets for round 6 of this fantasy season, starting off, as always, with keepers and defenders. An unusual for a first, maybe for this season at least, we have several consensus picks in this group. We actually have 4
That's
consensus
crazy.
picks, which is likely more defenders than many people tend to run, or right where you tend to run. But the consensus picks so far, we have Wagner, Gressel, and Lennon. I think I put him in there twice, but
I think you meant Wiley.
oh yeah, I did leave out Wiley. There we go, Wiley and Lennon. That's a slash right there, because like they were all mentioned, or at least Ashley, you sort of saw either or there. So I'll let you expand on that. But that's the general way people are leaning there. So what more can you tell us, Ashley?
Yeah, keepers are a tricky one this week. I'll say, as the one starting out, because so like you said, so many games kick off at 7:30. You guys always make me do math as the one West Coaster. And so if you pick any keeper from the first set of games, the only games where you can see lineups to keeper is LAFC at Colorado, Houston at San Jose, or Montreal at Vancouver. I'm not a huge fan of any of that. So there's a pretty decent chance I'm gonna go without a keeper this week. And the keepers that I'm looking at, I mean, maybe the Whitecaps keeper, but not a ton of point production out of them. They're at home, which I do like, but it's a Canadian game, and I never trust Canada on Canada. It's just kind of a rule that I live by. I've been right more than I've been wrong. So if there was a keeper I'd keeper to, it would probably be the Vancouver keeper. But I'm looking at Philly. I'm still looking at Andre Blake. They've been a little inconsistent about when he might come back. I think that having, who is it, Bendick is obviously great for price. I like Berkey. I said Berkey a couple weeks ago, and I don't remember who was on, but they gave me a real 1-2 about the negative stats of St. Louis's defense. But he was so impressive in this game against RSL at home this past week. I'm not trying to down talk Minnesota by any means, but I find him a little intriguing this week. And then I also liked Haas from Dallas. That's 4 different keepers I just threw out there, because if you can't tell, I'm very undecided. But for defenders, I really like Barriel. He's been really fun to watch. I've enjoyed, I'm hoping Reed feels the same, but I've enjoyed watching him play in that formation for Cincy so far this year. His point production has, for the most part, been consistent with how good he's looked. I'm going back to Wagner. I feel like, going back to like when you started dating, they were like hot, and now as the years have gone by, filled out a little bit, got a little older. That's how I feel about Kai Wagner this year. I keep going back to him, waiting for last season before that, Kai Wagner. And it's just not panning out. The benefit is, I don't know that he's ever been this cheap, 7.8 at this point of the season. So it's kind of like, why not? He's not 9.5 Julian Gressel, right? So I think it's decent. And then on that same token, though, I'm definitely also going to have Gressel. I like his goal contributions, the bonus points he's getting. He's technically playing as a midfielder most games for Whitecaps. It's a late game. If I have a bunch of bench people hit, I can scrub him out. And then I like Lennon / Wiley, which is what Reed was alluding to. I don't see the point in having both. Just from a price perspective, where Lennon is, I think there's some other good defensive options this week. Unlike Blaine, I don't ever triple up on anybody. It's not the way I like to go. Putting all my eggs in one basket always makes me nervous. So I think I'll probably stick Wiley on the bench for the price rise. I know he got a 0 last week, but still, and just see how they fare, at home against a pretty streaky Red Bull team. Red Bull is a team so far I don't like to bet on or against, but I could see them coming into Atlanta with most people healthy. The Gutman injury is a concern for me, but Robinson should be back. Most of their playmakers should be back, right? So I would expect a better production from them. Lennon got a goal last week though, which I think will also help with his price rise. But he needs, at this point in how they do it, he needs to produce more than Wiley would need to produce for him to get a price rise, if that makes sense. So probably not both, but definitely one.
Blaine.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat, but I've got a little bit more sure feeling on my goalkeeper situation. I like Celentano for Cincy. If the Mata injury is real and it keeps him out, that makes it even better. But I like Cincy for the front end of a keeperoo here. I'm not sold on Miami. I think Cincy's defense is a little bit underrated still. I just think this is a game where they can really get the job done. And so that's worth it for me on the front end. He is a little pricey, but his average is okay. So I'm good with that. And then Takaoka for Vancouver on the back end. It was an easy pick. Montreal is not a good scoring team. Yes, they put 3 on Philly right before they went on a bye, but I'm not sold on Philly at the moment right now. The way they're playing, it's just I don't know where the leakiness is coming from. It's a big issue for me, so I'm gonna bail on Cincy here with Sporting getting their guys back. It's something that we've talked about a little bit, but Polito was on the bench, and I think everybody expected him to play until the route was on, and then why risk his health in a game where he's not going to be a difference maker? But Russell came back in and looked pretty good, was creative. If Philly's leaky, I expect Kansas City to get one on them, and so I'm going to bail on Philly for that. Makes my goalkeeper picks real easy, and then my defenders, I'm going big. I don't see why not. Barrial and Gressel, I'm going to go with the attacking guys. I think these are matchups where they can both get forward, do their damage, and sneak away with some nice bonus point potential. They play out of position most of the time. It's easy to include them. And then I'm actually going to double up with Lennon and Wiley on the bench. It's that first game. It gives me a little bit of pivot room. But I like both of these attacking options going into Red Bulls. Wiley playing out of position and the price rise, guaranteed price rise is a great thing to have. Lennon plays really well. I was high on Red Bulls at the beginning of the season. I don't think they're going to be a bad team, but I see them giving up a lot of points towards wingbacks in this one for Lennon to get really involved. Their defense hasn't impressed me. I think their defense is weaker than I thought at the beginning of the season. So I'm willing to take Lennon into this game. And so I'm going with 3 expensive guys going over 8 million, and then Wiley's the cheap price rise option, but he's been too good and Red Bull isn't good enough. I could see another double-digit game out of him right here as well. So overall, I'm spending a ton of money on defense, and I'm grateful to have that big budget early in the season.
And I think that is absolutely unneeded. I do want to. I jumped the gun. Ari, you need to go, but I do want to make one point right now. As far as Barrial goes, he is not playing out of position. He's playing the position that he should be playing as that left wing or that left wing back right there. So pushing up, coming back. A lot of Cincinnati's attack goes down that left side. So he's not out of position. He's just playing the width of the field as he should be. But Ari.
All right. So I'm going to go with Sean Johnson as my kind of keeper this week, I guess. I'm kind of like Ashley where I typed in about 4 names and deleted all 4, then typed 4 more, deleted all 4, and got to the point where it's like there's some that you just kind of have that feeling. And unfortunately this week, the only feeling I have is like who's going to mess up the least. But I'm not super confident, but I like Sean Johnson just because Charlotte, they haven't really done anything to wow me, so to speak. But I also do have at the back end the Vancouver keeper, Takauka, or however you say his name. Just because, again, they're at home, and again, Montreal at the same time has not been a wow factor type of team. Now, with that said, you can get a guy like Kyoto who might break your heart or break your hopes and dreams. But again, those 2 are kind of my main. And then again, as Ashley said, I'm looking at Philly because I'm stuck in the past. And I'm used to Philly last year where
Yeah.
you
So hot.
always triple up Philly.
Right? So hot. They're so hot.
And it's just maybe it's the old man in me who's just stubborn, but I'm like, they're gonna get back to that point again. Like they have to. They're Philadelphia. They have to get back to that point. So I'm always keeping now this Ben Dick and Andre Blake kind of on the radar as well. For defenders, I did go Kai Wagner. Just again, he's gonna get back. This is the week. I'm feeling it. Wagner's coming back. I also like Blaine. I'm going with the double up on Atlanta, which as a Minnesotan, it's hard, but as a fantasy player, I think it's worth it because I could use Wiley's pretty much automatic bonus in terms of team value. And Lennon has
say it again. Scott is pointing out in chat that Wiley was most likely to play as a true left back this week with Gutman out. So I think that we should throw that out there. just in case it would make a difference to me. It sounds like it would make a difference to you too.
Yes. So it is very important. And that is why, again, I love this group because you start, it's hard to keep up with every single thing. So it's lucky we have a community that can kind of follow their own teams and spread the news to everybody else in a massive Discord. So there's a quick plug or shout out. But no, so I do have both currently. And then I'm also looking at, I think I just closed that sheet. So let me pull it up. Here we go. I said Gressel. At the moment, I don't have him in my team, but to be honest, he is the hot hand on defense right now. And he's playing very well, and it is against Montreal. So not too worried because they don't have Mihailovic to stop him anymore. So we'll keep Gressel in there. Yeah, that's mine.
So I'm coming with a couple of extra keeper suggestions that I saw in chat first that I think are definitely very viable. Petrovic, I think, is if you're going with a single keeper, that is absolutely something that you could consider this time. Still kind of expensive, 8.7, but New England against New York City at home, I think that's a very viable single keeper option. And then Christian shared what I think is a very interesting keeperoo option if you want to go with that. Sean Johnson to Mark Nkowski as an option. So picking up that Toronto game against Charlotte. So that's Toronto. Not sure what we think about them, but Charlotte we're not a big fan of. So can definitely see why you'd be looking at something like that. And then that gives you plenty of time to catch one of those 10:30 games. And if you wanted to go with San Jose, yeah, I could see how that would be a good option. Houston's got some bite to them, so that will definitely be an interesting game for sure. But that's an interesting keeper that I hadn't seen pop up just yet in our conversation. So some good options there. Going back to the defenders, I don't think you have to go big, or if you go big, I don't think you have to look at that same template right there. I love Barreal. I absolutely love Barreal and what he brings to the team. Especially since he's been moving into some of the set pieces that may bump him into why you would want him over others based on what I'm getting ready to say. Barreal's 9.2. He has 35 points, and he's generated 6 of those points from bonus points. Matt Miazga is 8.1, has 36 points, and has generated 9 of those points from bonus points. He's getting more bonus points. He has more overall points, and he's less expensive. I love everything that Barreal is doing, but his assists are not connecting into goals at this time. He's on set plays. He does. I get it. That could justify the extra 1.1 million that you would spend on him, but potentially you could look at some other options. I mean, even Mascara, who I was not a huge fan of after the first game, 8 million, 35 points, 8 coming from bonuses. So more on par.
I only ignore him because of you. So
I mean, I still he's fine. He's gotten a little bit better over these first time, but he has the
same amount of points produced as Barreal.
He is. If you're just looking at it from that straight fantasy point of view, I'm not sure if the 9.2 of what you're going to pay for Barreal is going to justify based on the scores that he's putting up. I mean, 7 points. I think we had 11 points with the first assist at the round one. Is that what you want for? That's more than Acosta. That's more than Lowen when you're looking at some of those sorts of production that people have. So I think that some of those defender price tags get kind of pricey. up there. Some other names they're going to throw out, especially if you do like New England, you can look at Kessler. He's been doing fantastic with bonus point production, 8.5. Rodriguez over in San Jose, 8 million right there, could save some points. Also been a great bonus point producer himself. So I think you do have some options of where you would want to go if you're looking at some of these players, and you don't have to spend the 9 millions on some of these players. So great suggestions. Great options right there, and you can see a lot of players when we had a question about lower priced defenders. Does anybody have, if Wiley is not on the table, do you all have any quick go-to defenders at a lower price that you'd want to shout out?
No.
This week, not really.
Last week was tricky, right? Because there are a lot of people that played that might not play this week. I think that's a tough one. Like was a couple Portland defenders that got picked up because they were cheap. But I mean, do you want them on the road at Dallas? I don't know.
Yeah, it's really tough for me right now because I'm looking for bonus points and I'm looking for consistency, and that's why I liked both Gressel and Barreal. They're aggressive against good or in good matchups. Like, I like these attacking matchups for them. So I think it's a potential to get those offensive bonus points. Center backs tend to rise steadily through the season when they're picking up bonus points, so they don't stay cheap. The bonus point producers are all hovering around that 7.58, 9 million mark. A couple of your guys have spiked really high, really fast, but I struggled to just find defenders in general that I trust to get bonus points and not be super overpriced at the moment. Maybe you have to go back to LAFC, but that's a road game. I know it's Colorado, but that's altitude. Any number of things can happen. Like, I feel like I'm looking at road players now if I want to find some better value that I trust in those games.
Christian's
it's
not some
100%.
names in chat. He said Quentin for Columbus is 5.6. No, I'm just trying to kill time while he types because I asked where these players are from.
Well, no, I mean there are some other options too as well. Like some of the Toronto options, Hedges is 7 million if you're looking at something there. If you want to look at other Cincinnati options, you've got Hagelin, you've got Gaddis who come in at lower points. A lot of the guys for St. Louis are going to be lower points if you're banking on. Again, like Blaine was saying, that turns into more clean sheet hunting than you're looking at right
you
there.
Have
Chicago
for Toronto. I just looked it up. This guy, 6 million defender, Sigurd Rosted.
Yeah.
His last 2 games, aside from the clean sheets, he has gotten 2 bonus points in each of those games. So I mean, it's not a lot, but in a week where you might be struggling to find just that one, below 7 million defender, that's something that at least like I would take into effect, where it's like, I'm not expecting you to go out there and get me a goal and 4 bonus points, but even 2 bonus points in a full 90, that's 4 points right there.
We're talking about bench plays, so it's not, we're not asking for the world from any of these guys.
Here, I'll give you
Tehran for Chicago is 6.3. They're at home against a pretty struggling DC United. I think you could look there. Gene said Mbazo is 6, but I agree with Blaine that that's not the most consistent defense, especially if Andre Blake's not back, but still it's going to start,
A team I've been kind of hyping up a little bit, and we talked about it at goalkeeper. Look at Vancouver. Laborda's picked up some bonus points, played fairly well in Champions League. Brown has got a goal on the season. Laborda's 4.6, Brown's 5.3.
But they're Vancouver, Blaine.
Is 5.4, but this is Montreal coming. This is Montreal coming cross country.
Yeah, but Canada versus Canada is a shit show. Go back and look at some of them. Canada versus Canada is a shit show.
A couple of us talked about him, Vancouver, for the goalkeeper shout, especially in the Aroos.
Just because of the timing, not because of the shutout.
But still, we like it. That's a matchup I like. Montreal is a team that has 3 goals on the season and got them all against Philly in the last game.
They don't have a shutout in 5 games. They don't have a shutout at home.
But Montreal is that bad. And if you're talking cheap, we're talking 5.4 and under.
Sure.
Like, that's cheap for a lot of upside playing Montreal. I'm not saying it's a sure thing.
I think it's
but
more
they got
fun to find cheap in some of these middies. And like, how fun was it to find Bossy and Kurt? Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I think it's more fun to find cheap in midfield and striker than it is in defense, because you kind of have to bank on a clean sheet for some of these cheap guys, right?
So what I say, we'll end this one because we need to move on to the other section. So what I give you as the advice, if you're struggling with some of your budget, is see if you can field a couple of defenders in the 8 million range. Those are good, solid players that should be for a lot of the great producers are right now. And then find a couple other players, maybe in this 6 to 7 range, and have them be on your bench with a scrub Austin player as your third defender, and you'll get the best of those two. So that would probably be your best bet for trying to shave a little bit of money at defense, but still not cripple yourself too much. But great, best defender discussion of the season so far. Let's move on now to midfielders. Consensus picks. We're looking at Almada and Espinoza. Thank you, Blaine, for finally jumping on the Espinoza bandwagon.
I'm off of it then.
Blaine, what are you looking at?
Yeah, I mean, those two guys have been two of the most consistent performers for the season, so they're going to be in my lineup more weeks than not right now. Looking past that, I've got to stick with home guys. That's just me. With the way this season has gone for midfielders, it's been hard to pick guys on the road. So just looking at home matchups, I like Acosta versus Miami. I know he hasn't done what we'd hoped. His average is a little low for his price, but I think this is a game where he can really go off. I like it. I'm looking a little deeper and low end for St. Louis. Again, I don't trust Minnesota's defense. They've been okay. But when I look at who's got road games, which midfielders are producing consistent points and whatnot, I think that's one of the better matchups for a home team to have, with a guy I can trust to get bonus points. So I'm looking at that. I'm not sold on everything this week. It's been tough picking midfielders for me all season. It's just been really bad. The other guy I threw in there, and I've got a second name to add here because I'm toying with two of them, and I didn't see anybody else talk about him, so I'm not stealing thunder here. The first guy I looked at for my fifth midfielder was Osorio for Toronto. He's played well. He's gotten bonus points. He's been involved. Charlotte's not a great team. I think you're match hunting here. You've got a good matchup. It's a great spot to throw him in there. But one guy on the road that may displace Osorio for me is Tillman in LAFC. I mean, going to Colorado, we haven't talked about him much at all this season, but he is quietly having a really good season as a new addition out there, trying to get his price and his stats. He's got 29 points in 4 matches for a 7.25 average. He's 8.2. He got a 12 last week. He seems to be rounding out into form. We've liked Sifu a lot lately, but if Tillman's gonna
a lot lately, we like Sifu.
He's the only guy that's doing anything for them.
I don't think. Look back at our notes. I don't think a single one of us three said his name last season.
And I'm going into last year some too.
Okay.
He's kind of been he's the midfielder you pick if you're taking an LAFC midfielder. I think Tillman could replace him at that spot. They're comparable price, but Tillman's playing well. If we go into a team that you've got a lot of good attackers, you've got a lot of potential for assists right here. Tillman seems to be finding that form with this team with a lot of attackers. If you tell me I can have a sub 10 million midfielder who is feeding a Vela, a Bwanga, whoever they throw out on the other side, a Poku right now, like if you tell me
he's not feeding them. He doesn't have an assist all season. He's doing his own shtick in the midfield.
Yeah, but if you tell me I can have an attacking mid with that lineup in front of him, I'm going to take him at sub 10. So I think Tillman, especially against Colorado, who has not been playing well, is missing some key guys. I guess we might have forgotten to mention it. Price, I think, is out for the season for Colorado now, which doesn't change their complexion much this season because he's hardly played anyway. But this is a team that is struggling, and if Tillman's here doing what he's doing right now, I think he's a name that's got to be on our list, and we haven't given him the credit he deserves so far this season. And after coming off a 12, I had to say it since nobody else
Yeah.
picked him. He's on my radar for sure, and he may displace Osorio. Honestly, he may displace Lucho at this point.
I mean, that's okay. Sorry, Ari.
Yeah, so aside from Almada and Espinoza, which, again, I think at this point, those two are have earned their right as always play chalk picks. I went back to Gazdag. He's been solid. The other two I have that are kind of, I wouldn't say a stretch, but a little not as chalky are Hector Herrera. Looking at him, I believe he is, yeah, so he's at San Jose. So it is a later game. At the very least, you put him in your lineup if your bench all hits. You take him out. What do you do? That means you did well, your bench hit. But he's put up on the road, he's put up an 11 and an 8, and then at home, an 11 and a 7. So his points, I mean, his lowest point is a 7, which we talk about from midfielder, like for the most part, 6 and up you keep. And he's, again, 7's the lowest, but being able to get an 11 on the road against a certain team in blue and orange that somebody here likes, and an 8 against New England, that's enough for me to start him. The other is going to be Mark Anthony K. Now, I did want to double check on that just to make sure he's playing. But again, that's another nice thing about the Discord is you can always ask people and get that answer right away. But he's not he's not a 10 million type of player playing against Charlotte, and he has a couple games out of the 4 he's played where he's got a couple 9s in there, which to me that is worthy of an opportunity to start. Again, the nice part about it being Monday, though, is that can change. But as far as making an initial roster to start with, an initial foundation, he is a good player that I would like to have in my team. 2 goals in 4 games is 50% chance I'll take my risk on that for a player that is 8.5 million. Reed, how about you? But
I didn't realize he left. That was fantastic. I'm just gonna go. Especially because if Reed went, you would cut me, Ari.
Oh wow, I did.
That's okay.
Sorry,
it's okay. I'm still here. I like everybody you guys said. I don't feel like I have anything exceptionally different to contribute here. I'm really high on Lowen. I wrote that Stroud pick pretty hard at the beginning of the season for price rise, and I was very proud at how that paid off. I don't need him anymore. So I've definitely upgraded the past few rounds to Lowen. I like him a lot. Again, I'm not in any way trying to come at you, mini fans here. I'm a big fan of the Minnesota fans. But I like St. Louis this week. They've just been consistent, and it's another home game. And there's a lot of things about St. Louis. If you've watched them, they've gotten lucky, right? Like, I don't think a team has ever gotten so many goals from other team assists, so far. But those two, he and Klaus both, still look good. And so I like him. I'm picking him up this week. And then, I'm definitely paying attention to Almada. I think he can create something out of nothing, but I also think that he has one more game, right? He has one more game with Argentina, I think, and then comes back. And so their game is early-ish on Saturday, so I'm interested to see if that plays anything to do with it. But I'm definitely going to pay attention to him. I think that no one's really, Zella is a name that I think is worth throwing out there. He wasn't first on my list, but it is a home game, and RSL's defense is questionable. Yeah. And so I think that tomorrow night, Scott says, is the Argentina game. So best case scenario, Almada would be coming home on Wednesday. So it depends on how much he plays, and he's having a good stint with them. He scored his first goal. So I'm hoping Almada will start, because if he starts for me. But Zella is someone I think we need to give a look to,
especially if Ramirez is going to be this good.
Well, so here's the thing, Blaine. He had one good game, so I'm not ever going to pick up a 10 who didn't play with a striker who scored without that 10. So I don't think Ramirez is this good. This is his second stint in MLS, and he never really. I mean, I guess Ari, you probably know Christian Ramirez better than any of us, but I mean, he's not a bad striker, but he wasn't not starting for any other reason than he wasn't better than Cucho.
I guess my point is, Zella is a free kick guy that we like in certain matchups. Zella with the Premier 10, he was this way with Zardes, with Cucho playing like he is. His assist numbers go up.
Yeah, but I don't think Christian Ramirez is comparable to that. I think Christian Ramirez is like 2 tiers down from Cucho.
If this is a hungry Christian Ramirez who can replicate what he did, and I'm not saying he can, I'm just saying if you believe in what Ramirez just did, I think that ups Zella's stock right now with Cucho out.
Sure.
And you're not playing with the scrub. You're playing with the guy who's proven MLS goal scorer.
He's not a proven MLS goal scorer. He's a B to C level MLS goal scorer.
He is the type of striker. He is a standard striker where he doesn't do anything fancy. If you can feed him a good ball through the middle, he is going to score. He's got a boot.
Sure.
And when we had Darwin Quintero on Minnesota, when he had Quintero dishing him the ball, he was scoring goals. Now, when he didn't have Quintero in there, he's not. I can't say because I love Ramirez a lot, but he's not.
I like him too. My only point was Christian Ramirez isn't making me pick up Zella. If that's is my only point. Christian Ramirez has one game. Zella being Zella and coming back is what makes me interested in Zella this week. Not Christian Ramirez has nothing to do with it.
Okay, but here's this, because I'm just the biggest Zardes fan ever.
I know this.
I've
heard.
Zardes feasted on Zella's service. Ramirez is that same type of guy, and Ari will tell you from the Minnesota days. You give him good service, he puts balls on frame. That's key passes. That's assists. That turns into big points for the guy that's feeding him. If Ramirez is going to be that guy, even if he's a BC tier striker in MLS, if he is taking good passes and putting them on frame, that is a massive boost to a 10 when a key pass is 1 point. You don't need a couple of crosses. You don't need a couple of good passing. A key pass is a bonus point. If that's all it takes, I think Ramirez, with Cucho out, Ramirez doesn't diminish Zella's value.
That's not what I'm saying. You're saying a bunch of things I'm not saying. I'm saying I like Zella and Christian Ramirez has nothing to do with it. And I think calling out Christian Ramirez, I think Christian Ramirez makes it so there's an actual striker playing for Cucho and not some kid just filling in. But I don't think Christian Ramirez boosts Zella. Zella's already Zella. I think Cucho boosts Zella. I don't think that I think Christian Ramirez it's for me, it's kind of like Rui Diaz is out, so Heber's in. Heber is not Rui Diaz statistically or how they play at all, but he's a great replacement because he's hurt. That's how I feel about Christian Ramirez. I think Christian Ramirez scored 2 goals, one of which I think Ari could have scored. Not an attack on Ari. I just think that Ari could have done it. I mean, I'm just saying what you're saying is
with my left
different from what I'm saying. I'm saying I like Zella. I don't think you need to throw Christian Ramirez into it. If he has a hat trick this week, Blaine, great. You're right. He's an elite MLS striker, but that's not my point. My point is just Zella is still Zella. I think that he can do what he needs to do on his own.
Ranch just came through. Ramirez has 77 goals in 109 games in MLS. That's really good.
But that has nothing to do with Zella. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that I like Zella and Christian Ramirez has nothing to do with it.
And I think we need to move on.
We can't. Zella. You were gone, Dad. We got off track.
No.
Are we still in
We do need to move on. Well, you know what? Let's go ahead and move on to strikers so Blaine can have a 40-minute dialogue about Christian Ramirez and Tyler can give him all these bolstered stats to back it.
Well, the
It'll
one
be
thing,
strikers, Ari, go.
The one thing I will say, since we're wrapping up midfielders now, I see is
good. He read it wrong. What's the sorry?
Ojeda's cheap. But Nashville can be tough. If Zella's back, then I do like Zella. I don't know what you guys talked about, but I do like Zella. If he's back, if he's not, then you can still check out Matan, who was in there and did pretty well last week, I think. and Portland is struggling. So maybe Velasco over there with Dallas. So.
Yeah.
Could be-
37 goals, Blaine.
Don't know if
in
you all
109 games.
had that. So let's talk about forwards for real this time.
Let
And
Ari talk
there
first.
are no consensus picks for forwards. So Ari, who do you like?
Oh, we don't?
All righty. So I have Klaus on my team, and that is because
Isn't
aside
it hard
from
to do?
aside from this last week, which is one of those where it's like, everyone tinkers with their team 80 million times. I just told myself, you are not touching Klaus, leave him in. And he gifted me with 17 points. So regardless, I have to at least put him on my bench as one of those auto-roo options and prove that he's worth one of the one or two auto-roos that goes in for highest points. But with that said, and it kind of goes back to the midfield picks with Lowen as well. Minnesota is 2-0 on the road. They're not giving up goals. In fact, they have given up the second fewest goals. Now, granted, they did have one less game because they were the week 2 bye, but they've only given up 3 total goals, 1 goal each week, and then obviously one where they didn't give up any at all. But St. Louis, on the other hand, obviously is St. Louis, and they are riding high and kind of kicking ass at home. So we're just going to – I just basically put in my notes that is going to be a very juicy matchup because it could go either way. And so I'm like, as a Minnesota fan, I'm sure, Christian can kind of back me on this. Beginning of the season, even Minnesota fans were talking about, like, we're not going to be very solid. But through our 4 weeks that we played, we've found, or now 5 weeks, like, we found a way every single time to, like, at most give up 1 goal. And we haven't had a loss on our record. So it's like, again, it's kind of riding that like hand where I don't know what's working, but it's working. So like, it's hard to bet against them. That's why I did not put Lowen in, but I did have to put Klaus. I do have him. I did put him on my bench though. I'll make him earn it again a second time, just again as an auto-roo. I have Bossy in there, but again, that is injury dependent. If he's not injured, he is a very good cheap option, and he's obviously scored in his previous 2 games. And then right now I do have Mr. Vasquez in. Is it, I think, Brandon? Yes, it is Brandon.
Oh.
Is it Brian? Brandon Vasquez for Cincinnati. But that pick is most likely going to get tinkered with, but he's in the initial roster because, again, you got to start somewhere and just get a lineup in there that at least fits your budget and then go from there. I didn't like strikers as much this week, in the sense of there wasn't any super chalky picks. There's some good ones, but there's a lot of also different picks. So I have Vasquez currently, but again, that is not anything set in stone. That is just a pick right now.
Ashley.
Obviously, I have Christian Ramirez.
Proud of you.
I have Klaus. I don't have him at all. I never even considered him. I like Klaus this week a lot. I think he was probably one of the first people I put on my team. I like Jesus Ferreira. I think that Dallas against Portland game is getting a little overlooked. And then I know this is very homer of me, but I'm doing it because the money will be good. I'm picking Jordan Morris at Galaxy. He statistically plays well there. I didn't really like how they looked at Portland. They haven't quite gotten it together just yet. I do not in any way expect 4 goals from him at all. And so I am definitely, he's 9.6, but he's averaging 10.4. Yes, a lot of that is his game last week, but he's probably going to be a bench play for me. But like I said, it's a little bit of a homer pick because I know how Jordan tends to play away at Galaxy. So that's someone that is probably my team. And then I was throwing out a completely different Columbus striker, if you will, for price rise, and that's Russell Rowe. He had a goal and an assist last week as a 4.0 striker. I'm not sure how their absences will impact if he does or doesn't start, but I always think it's good to highlight some of these crazy cheap players We see a lot of the cheapness come from a defender or a striker, right? Bossy, I think, is a good example, Ari, and then people were really high on Kerr for a couple of weeks, and who was that Orlando striker for the first 2 weeks? Gonzalez, I think it was his name. I just looking through stuff, getting ready for today, seeing him with a goal and assist this last round, I just felt like he should be shouted out if he's someone that starts, would be a good price rise or a bench play. I like too many strikers, I think, to do that myself this week. And I have, as I've probably said too often now, it sounds braggy, I have the money to have a third striker. But I think that's a good look at someone who, like I said, was not really on my radar. He was owned by almost 3% of people last week, which is kind of crazy, but definitely a cheap striker option for price rise if he starts again.
Blaine.
Yeah. I'm gonna go against the grain, and we don't have a consensus pick because I didn't pick Klaus this week. Maybe that's just my homer bias, and I refuse to root for anything St. Louis. Like,
Probably.
I detest everything St. Louis. I'm a Missouri kid. I'm a Kansas City kid. Like, Kansas City, St. Louis do not mix at all. I can't do it, but I was running some numbers really quick, and St. Louis has played against teams that have given up a combined 32 goals on the season. That's a lot. Even if you take out what St. Louis has scored on them, we're still talking teams that have given up a lot of goals. Now, Minnesota, on the other hand, is a team that has struggled to keep a clean sheet, but they have given up, 4 goals on the season so far? But against their opponents have given up a combined 18 goals so far. Or, no, their opponents have scored a combined 18 goals. I got that backwards.
Yeah.
Their opponents are scoring goals at a pretty regular clip, and Minnesota has only given up 4 of those.
3 of them, actually.
3 of them, and 1 was an own goal, right?
Correct.
Yeah. So Minnesota is a solid defense. So I'm not going to pick Klaus in this one. I think St. Louis will probably win the game, but I don't think this is one of those where you're going to see St. Louis.
Someone's got to score a goal for them to win the game, Blaine.
I know. I know. But I don't think this is one of those multi-goal games for St. Louis where you're going to see a 3 or a 4 on their scoreline. They only got 2 against Portland. Portland's a bad defense. I'm going to just say it out loud. They got 2 on Portland on the road. I don't know. I think Minnesota is going to be their strongest defensive test so far this season. I can't bet on Klaus at this point. Plus, I'm spending my money on defense because I like the guys that I had there. I like the attacking options and the bonus points. I'm looking, and I can't believe he hasn't been said yet, I'm looking at Ferreira against Portland. Dallas has been scoring goals.
I said it. I said Jesus Ferreira.
Okay.
It's my second.
You didn't have him on your list, did you?
It says Jesus.
Okay.
That's why he and I are on a first name basis.
He thought you were talking about like the actual Jesus.
The actual Jesus.
The one that everyone prays to on Sundays.
Yeah.
That to me is the sure thing. I don't trust Portland at all. Ferreira is there. And then I'm looking at Cordova or White, whoever starts. I don't trust Montreal at all. I like Vancouver well enough. I think when you've got Gressel there, you've got a forward that's going to score goals or have the potential to get some bonus points. I like those guys, but they're an easy late game scrub for a bench that hits. I don't trust most of the forwards right now. And now Tyler's telling me Cordova's out 6 to 8 weeks, but he didn't have that on the injury report that he sent me.
Oh, don't blame Tyler. Don't blame Tyler.
So I won't blame that. But I had Cordova White. Like, if White's starting, White's been a proven goal scorer in MLS. He's not the greatest name in there, but you give him a good matchup and everything. So White's an easy pick, especially at that cheaper price point. I think you'd be doing yourself a disservice if you overlooked White this early in the season. I know it's the last game, but he's an easy scrub out against Montreal, who's giving up goals. I don't trust Montreal at all right now. I think you've got some easy options there, and it's an easy way to just scrub out of somebody. Or
White has a 2-1-3-3-2. 2-1,
He's due for a
3-3,
good game now.
Yeah,
He scored in CCL for him, I think. And
I believe you, but I don't have that.
but again, they're facing Montreal. Montreal has been an absolute dumpster fire to start this season, other than the one game where they scored against Philly and still gave up 2 goals.
Yeah.
Are you telling me you don't have Christian Ramirez after this whole dialogue?
No, I don't have Christian Ramirez.
You know, I think just
Ramirez
based
makes Zella
on
better.
this dialogue, Christian Ramirez is going to go in my team this week, and one he was going to be happy and one he's going to be disappointed, or
Do
both
it. Roll
you're
the-
disappointed. I don't
So I
know.
have Christian Ramirez.
Okay,
I think
great.
that's true. I think I have.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Reed,
At
who
least
else do you
Reed is
have?
the smart one of us all.
So I said Ramirez, especially with Cucho continuing to be out, and with that form that he's found coming right back in there, I think that's something he's going to want to ride on with RSL, which is not 100% solid there. So I think that's a good option there, especially if Zella comes back. I think that increases his stock. It's somebody else that RSL has to keep track of instead of being able to just focus on the hot hand. But yeah, I think Ramirez is a very viable forward option for this round, and also one that helps you with your value as well at $7 million. Otherwise, I think you guys covered a lot of the players I think that people are going to be looking at. I didn't hear you mention. I would have thought you would have said Bouanga, Ashley, after him coming on there and scoring the goal, as we mentioned at the top of the show.
I mean, he's expensive-ish. It is a road game.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely thought about it. Yeah, I definitely thought about it. I actually verbalized it to Spencer today. I was like, I don't know. Do you think you have to have Bouanga on the road against Colorado? I don't know. If he's in your team, I think that's fine. I didn't have him in this draft. I think, Jordan Morris is also a road player, and he's only 0.1 cheaper. But like I said, that's kind of a homer pick for me, and it's one that I like for a couple of other reasons. If Bouanga starts, and like we've said, Colorado's kind of banged up defensively, midfielder-wise, all the things. I don't think it's a bad pick, but going on the road to Colorado can go a couple different ways for teams, right? So it always does make me nervous. I think Colorado's a team to root against, but I don't know if they're a team to bet against, if that makes sense.
A team to root against, but a team to root against at home? Question mark.
Yeah, right.
They still have that. They still have that altitude.
It's not Colorado at home that's the problem. It's away teams at altitude that's the real problem there.
Sure.
I mean, that seems like potato right now. What we're talking about. I mean, that is altitude. Colorado at home is altitude, so that's what we mean.
Colorado, it's because
that's
other
what we
teams can't
mean.
adjust.
Colorado at home. So, all right. Well, I don't see many other options to add there. So we're going to hit up very quickly our captain recommendations. It looks like we're Ashley. You didn't put yours in, but are we all in agreement this week? Almada. Anybody? Any convincing arguments against Almada? Chat.
He might not start, so we did
different.
talk about that.
Sure.
We did talk about that. We're not. He does have a game, so
Lot
if he's
may
not
not
starting?
twice.
If he's not starting, who would you go to, you guys?
Right now I'm torn between Espinoza and Lowen, who are in my roster. Lowen's just played so well lately, but I think I go with the bonus points in Espinoza.
I put in Hector Herrera, and it's strictly because, again, those differential picks. Hopefully, this could be the week that San Jose versus Houston winds being a 4-3 game, and he nets like 2 of those goals. Again, I think in a league where 90% or 95% of us will take Almada, if you need a quick change, you're like, you know what, it's early enough in the season where I can make kind of a risky move. I'm already out of I'm 895th in terms of making Champions League. So I would have to score the most incredible week in the history of fantasy MLS to even make it.
Crazy.
I might just make a random pick on Herrera where it's, maybe only 20% of the entire FMLS community might have him and gain that little bit of extra overall ranking.
I hadn't thought about this, but if Almada doesn't go, I'll probably switch him straight over to Zella. And Zella captain versus RSL isn't a bad shout.
No, that's what I would do. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't have Zella in my lineup right now, I don't think I'm going to take him this week just because I'm not sure. But if Almada doesn't go, it's an easy swap to Zella. And Zella, if it's in my roster, is a definite captain option this week.
Yeah.
I would look at SB probably. He's been a little weird with his bonus point production, and he's had some absolute screamers that haven't gone in. But I think Espinoza would probably be who I would go to, or I mean I guess possibly Lone, but I don't know. I captain
You could live on the edge. Live on the edge and
I'm
captain
also
Superman.
not making
Ramirez.
sure if he makes it in my team.
And some other options coming from chat. Jesus is one that's been mentioned. Klaus was mentioned there. Another one for Espinoza. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. Please do, if you have not in the past, participate in the Discord player poll. We do post those on the MLSFantasyBoss.com. Share it out over social. And so that's a great way for you to kind of provide your feedback, especially in the captain section. So be on the look for that at the MLS Fantasy Boss Discord. Well, thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight. And I apologize, I had to step away really quickly to help deal with Baby Roo, but he is feeling better with hope, though he said his tummy was feeling sad right now, so we'll see what happens there.
Me too,
but let's wrap everything up tonight with our plugs. Ari.
Again, the Discord community, but not just for the reason that they're amazing with if you need to find, differentials, but more so every once in a while, and this happened a couple weeks ago, someone posted, in fact, it might have been me, I don't even recall, but there was an image of ranch flavored ice cream, and it just turned into a giant conversation about like Canadian food versus American and the weird stuff we eat and whatever. And I know, just kind of fun on like a random day when you just, you work, we do all that. It's nice to have just a group of people you can shoot the breeze with over the most nonchalant stuff and just have a good time with them. Half of them you've never even met in real life. So it's kind of unique, but fun for sure. So yeah, that community for sure.
Ashley.
Got nothing this week.
Nothing. Blaine.
Wine.
Yeah, I'll plug the Discord and the community. I know these guys have always got my back. I've had a very rough personal week, and I haven't shared with a whole lot. I've talked to a few of my buddies, and I'm going to talk to Ari about it a little bit after this because it concerns him a little bit too. But I just had a very rough personal week with some family issues, and I always know I can turn to my Discord friends for some support and coverage on this with some of these random things that come up. So if you're not part of our community, I encourage you to go join us. I've got friends that I know if I ever go to town, I can call them up or message them on Discord more likely, and just we can meet up for a beer or whatever. This has been a really big community. We talked about it through the COVID era. They kept us sane. We made some real friendships online that kept us going through the tough times. And even now that we're getting out of COVID and we can get back to more normal, we've got some real friendships built from Discord. And if you're not part of that community, please go get part of that community, because there's too many good people that you should meet and just get to know a little bit. Because I've got real friends that I've met online that I've never met in person, that I know if I'm in town, I can go out and get a beer with them in a heartbeat.
Well, of course, for me, you can check out MLSFantasyBoss.com with the articles that we have there. The Discord community, as has been well mentioned, be sure to catch us next month. We're going to be having a new slate of guests coming on. We have had a bunch of our patrons this past month, which is one of the perks of the Patreon supporters, but we're going to branch out there. If you have suggestions for guests, let us know. I'm going to reach out to some of our fellow podcasters and fantasy players, so be on the lookout to your DMs and everything. But appreciate everyone so much for joining us each week, and with hope this will be better for everyone than some of us had this week now that everyone is back. But regardless, as always, good luck.